If you're watching this right now, make sure your doors are locked, because what I'm about to tell you isn't just a story, it's real. And if you have that creeping feeling that you're being watched, you probably are. Subscribe if you dare to find out what really happened inside the most feared house in America. Imagine finding the perfect home, the one you've always dreamed of. For Derek and Maria Broaddus, that dream became a reality in 2014. They bought a magnificent 6-bedroom house at 657 Boulevard in the idyllic town of Westfield, New Jersey. It was everything they wanted: a peaceful, safe neighborhood, a sprawling yard, and more than enough space for their 3 young children. They were on top of the world, ready to start the next chapter of their lives. But just 3 days after closing the deal, their dream began to unravel into a living nightmare. It started with a single, plain white envelope in their mailbox. There was no return address, just one ominous word written on the front: The Watcher. Derek opened it, expecting maybe a welcome note from a quirky neighbor. What he found inside sent a chill down his spine. The letter started politely enough: "Dearest new neighbor at 657 Boulevard, allow me to welcome you to the neighborhood." But the pleasantries ended there. The tone shifted, becoming possessive and deeply unsettling. The letter continued: "657 Boulevard has been the subject of my family for decades now. My grandfather watched the house in the 1920s, and my father watched in the 1960s. It is now my time." The writer claims to be the rightful guardian of the house, someone who had been put in charge of watching and waiting for its second coming. It was bizarre, but Derek might have dismissed it as a prank, if not for what came next. The letter asked, "Do you know the history of the house? Do you know what lies within the walls of 657 Boulevard? Why are you here? I will find out." The anonymous author seemed to know things they couldn't possibly know. They knew Derek and Maria had 3 children. The letter even mentioned them by their nicknames, referring to them as the young blood the house craves. "I see that you have flooded 657 Boulevard with contractors so that you can destroy the house as it was supposed to be." It read, "TSK, TSK, a bad move. You don't want to make 657 Boulevard unhappy." The Watcher's words were a direct invasion of their privacy, a violation of the sanctity of their new home. The letter ended with a question that would haunt the family for years: "Who am I?" "I am the Watcher." Derek's hand shook as he finished reading. The police were called, but they were skeptical. It was just a letter, they said. Probably a joke from a jealous neighbor who lost out on the house. But Derek and Maria couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. They felt eyes on them every time they stepped outside, every time they looked out a window. They halted their renovations, too afraid to make any more changes that might anger the mysterious sender. A couple of weeks later, a second letter arrived. This one was even more specific and far more sinister. The Watcher now knew the children's birth order and seemed to be tracking their every move. "I am pleased to know your names now and the name of the young blood you have brought to me," the letter stated. It described their daughter painting on an easel in the enclosed porch. The Watcher could see them from somewhere close. The letter writer even asked about the children by name. "Will the young blood play in the basement? Or are they too afraid to go down there alone? I would be very afraid if I were them. It is far away from the rest of the house. If you were upstairs, you would never hear them scream." The family was paralyzed with fear. They hadn't even moved in yet, but their dream home had become a source of constant dread. They stopped bringing their children to the house altogether. Derek and Maria would go there at night, sometimes turning on all the lights and blaring the TV to create the illusion of a full house, other times sitting in the dark, just listening, waiting. Derek became obsessed. He set up webcams throughout the property. He spent countless hours watching the footage, searching for any sign of a person lurking nearby. He found nothing. They hired a private investigator. They even brought in a former FBI agent to analyze the letters and create a profile of the Watcher. The profile suggested it was likely an older individual, Someone living very close by who felt a sense of ownership over the house and the neighborhood. Suspicion fell on several neighbors. One family who had lived on the street for decades was particularly eccentric, but there was no proof. No evidence tying anyone to the letters. Every lead was a dead end. Then came the third letter. The watcher's questions became more pointed, more terrifying. Where have you gone to? 657 Boulevard is missing you. It was as if the house itself was a living entity communicating through this phantom figure. The letter demanded to know where they were and why they weren't moving in. It was clear the watcher wasn't just observing from afar, they were getting impatient. They wanted the young blood inside the walls of 657 Boulevard. The family's dream was in ruins. They couldn't move in, but they also couldn't sell. They were legally obligated to disclose the letters to any potential buyers and who would want to buy a house that came with a personal stalker. They tried to sue the previous owners, the Woods family, arguing that they must have known about the watcher, and they did. The Woods family had received a single, similar letter just days before they moved out, but they had dismissed it as a harmless prank and threw it away. They had no idea the harassment would continue with such terrifying intensity. The Broaddus family was trapped. They were paying a mortgage and property taxes on a house they were terrified to live in. The financial and emotional strain was immense. Their savings were wiped out. The stress took a toll on their marriage and their health. The dream had become a curse. One evening, while Derek was working on the house, he heard a strange noise. It was a faint thud coming from above. He went to investigate, his heart pounding in his chest. He checked the second floor, then slowly climbed the narrow stairs to the attic. He pulled the cord and the attic door creaked open. He shined his flashlight into the darkness. Nothing, just dust and old insulation. But as he scanned the floor, the beam of light landed on something small, something that shouldn't have been there. It was an old toy soldier, standing perfectly upright in the dead center of the attic floor. Derek was certain it wasn't there before. Had someone been inside? Was the watcher not just watching, but also entering their home? After 6 agonizing months, they made a decision. They couldn't go on like this. They put the house back on the market at a significant loss. Eventually, they managed to rent it out. They warned the new tenants about the letters, sharing every horrifying detail. For a while, things were quiet. Maybe the watcher had finally given up, but then, 2 weeks after the new family moved in, the tenant's landscaper was clearing some weeds when he found it. Another letter addressed to Derek and Maria. This letter was filled with rage and threats of revenge. To the vile and spiteful Derek and his wench of a wife, Maria, it began. The watcher was furious that they had rented out the house. You wonder who the watcher is? Turn around, idiots. Maybe you even spoke to me, one of the so-called neighbors who has no idea who the watcher could be. Or maybe you do know and are too scared to tell anyone? Good move. The letter contained chilling threats, talking about car accidents, house fires, and the sudden illness of a loved one. It was clear the watcher would never let them go. The tenant, understandably terrified, broke the lease and moved out immediately. Finally, in 2019, 5 years after their nightmare began, Derek and Maria Broaddus sold 657 Boulevard for a loss of nearly $500,000. They sold it to a new couple who knew the entire story but were not deterred. To this day, the identity of the watcher remains a complete mystery. The police investigated for years. They took DNA from one of the envelopes, but it didn't match anyone in the system or any of the suspected neighbors. They conducted extensive interviews. They followed every lead, but nothing. The case remains open, unsolved. Was it a neighbor with a twisted sense of entitlement? A former resident who never wanted to leave? Or was it something else, something connected to the house itself? The letters hinted at secrets hidden within the walls, secrets that only the watcher knew. The story of 657 Boulevard is a terrifying reminder that even in the safest of towns, in the most beautiful of homes, you can never truly know who is watching. So the next time you hear a creak in the night or see a curtain twitch in a window across the street, just remember the Broaddus family. Their dream home came with a guardian, an unseen observer who claimed the house as their own. And if you ever find your dream home, and the price seems too good to be true, maybe ask yourself if someone else already lives there, in the walls. Thanks for watching. If this story sent a shiver down your spine, hit that like button, and be sure to subscribe for more true horror stories you won't be able to forget. Stay safe out there and always check your mail.